Good evening and welcome to the program. This is the Limelight. My name is Tim Apollo. Now, government is in the final stages of enacting a law, and it is the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Control Bill 2023, a bill which was tabled in May this year, and it intends to criminalize use, farming, supply, trading of narcotic drugs. And the State Minister for Internal Affairs, General David Muhoozi, tabled this bill, and it's one of the efforts, or part of the efforts, by government to bolster against the supply, use, and use of illicit drugs. We need to look into this law, possibly know what its effects could be, and what we may have missed without this particular law. And usually we connect with experts. Richard Baguma Tinkasimire is a policy advocate, and he has participated in the drafting of this particular bill. Richard Baguma, let me speak to you, and you tell us exactly, without this law in place, what could it have been as effects of not having this particular bill or law?
Thank you very much, Apollo, and a good evening to our viewers. Apollo, if you go to any big treatment center, any big health unit in this country, you will find that the issues or challenges to do with mental health have significantly gone up. In fact, Apollo, if you remember, I think it was the Ministry of Health in one study which said perhaps up to 14 million of us Ugandans have mental health challenges. Now, this is important to understand, and one of the driving things around this problem of mental health in this country is the use of these drugs, and the drugs are diverse. One of the other fastest growing businesses in this country, I keep saying, is the issue of rehabilitation centers. Now, rehabilitation centers are not rehabilitating anything else, but people, particularly young people, who are affected by the use of drugs. The country is estimated to lose money in trillions in dealing with the problem of these drugs. And the lack of an effective and strong control law has been one of the problems that the country faces in enforcing or dealing with other control approaches of the country. So, loss of money, destruction of our young people, diversion of medical and other resources to go to this preventable problem. Also, drugs are drivers for many problems. We know HIV, we know gender-based violence, we know road accidents that are rampant now, crashes and other rollings of cars and problems. So the problem of drugs really is a problem to social, to economic, and to health matters in this country.
Richard, I would implore you quickly to speak, with the statistics. What do you think, or what do you have as facts around the impact and the devastation it has caused?
Okay, just time. And sometimes they don't trickle down. Let's take the case of a single round of say 8 weeks or 12 weeks in a rehabilitation center for young. And by the way, the average age of the largest number of people in rehabilitation centers is between 12 and 24. It is estimated that about maybe 70% of the people in this age group has used some drug, be it alcohol, be it tobacco or all the tobacco products, be it Mairunji, be it Enjaga, or now increasing heroin and cocaine, some of it administered intravenously. And now the drugs that are being abused, which are medical drugs. So this has increased quite a lot. So if you're talking about up to 70% of young people who have attempted either of these drugs, and you are saying that to rehabilitate one who has become addicted, you will not use less than $1 million shillings for a round of treatment of probably 8 to 10 weeks in a rehabilitation center, an average. So you can imagine how much money goes just to, for example, the National Referral Hospital of Butarika. If you have, let's say, 2,000 patients, you can see that just a round of rehabilitation for only that place will need maybe 2 billion shillings. Now, take this situation all around the country and take it all over the year. So you find, now take the other cost of accidents, of violence, and all the other problems. So we go in trillions, Apollo. We are talking about trillions of shillings if you are talking about figures. But we are also talking about destruction of the young people of this country. And we are talking a high percentage of our young people. So some of these cannot even just be broken down in statistics and numbers. Sometimes we need to see what is the cost of a single life that is lost to drug addiction.
All right, and what kind of drugs are you talking about? Well, you've talked about cannabis. I think that is marijuana. You have talked about alcohol and tobacco. What other drugs are we talking about? Because we even see kids, street kids, sniffing fuel or some substance. Are all those categorized as drugs?
Okay. So for the particularly the drugs and psychotropic substances bill that was, by the way, Apollo, this law was passed previously. Some lawyers went into court and knocked down this law on a technicality. It was not on the substance of the law. It was on a technicality that it was passed without quorum. That's all. But the content was, in my view, the best that this country can have. That's why it has come back to Parliament. And if you probably recall, or I will remind the viewers, that even when it came back, the Honorable Attorney General requested Parliament for more time, and the parliamentarians dismissed him and said, this is urgently needed for this country. So this law has been passed before. This content that we are talking about was debated. You talked about Meirunji, or what the others call Njaga, the usual, you know. But we are also talking about the drugs that are actually used in hospitals. Many are abusing the drugs that are used in hospitals, especially to treat pain. Now, when you look at the studies that have happened, one of the commonest now drugs, for example, is a drug that is administered, and it's called methamphetamine. Now, usually that is a drug that is administered. Even the health workers are abusing it. So we have drugs that are being legislated for separately. There is a separate tobacco control law which deals with the tobacco products, which are anyway drugs and body-altering drugs. You are talking about alcohol. We are also now pushing for an alcohol control bill. But this particular law, Apollo, that you are asking me about, is on the common drugs of Njaga, of Mira or Mairunji, of cocaine, of heroin, of the drugs, both veterinary and human, that are being abused by people to get euphoria and get drunk and intoxicated. Now, you have talked about the aviation fuel. That's one of the things. By the way, Apollo, they also abuse petrol, car petrol. They also sniff it. They mix that with glue. Glue is also one of the other things. So there are many innocent-looking things which people know how to mix because they have studied the chemical compounds, and these ones are being trafficked to our young people. And these are very, very dangerous to human life.
All right, let's talk about the hassle that has been in Parliament I can recall clearly some groups of people, some from Wakiso Miraa farmers and some other groups from Butambala, and the contention was on Miraa, which is called cat, a vegetable fruit that is chewed. For those reasons we may talk about. And that particular jostling was, of course, about the scientific proof that it's indeed a drug, and it should be classified among these psychotropic substances. And actually, during the court case of 2016, when the other law was shut down, the petitioners also raised this issue that the Miraa or cat has not been proved scientifically that it is actually also a drug. Now this time around, tell us if that has been sorted out, and we will not see also another group of petitioners running to court to contest this particular issue. Anyway.
Apollo, it would be extremely presumptuous of me to say that people will not be running to court. They will be running to court. And the contention is not just about Miraa, which is Mairunji, which in some cultures is used as a leaf of, relaxation. But that is the same with alcohol. And then the other one is cannabis. And the argument that is being fronted, this is used in medicine. Yes, it is processed. And because the processed cannabis has been processed and tested through the laboratories by scientists, so its levels have been proved not to be as dangerous to human beings when you compare to the benefits. But here people are talking about raw and processed, and this is very dangerous, I think, these arguments. Very disingenuous in my view and very full of lies. Now, the arguments about science is psychotropic substances. These are substances that they alter the working of the body, particularly the head. So if you take something, and when you take it in your body, it creates elation, it creates you to become drowsy, or it affects your sleeping pattern. So it makes you gets nausea, or you want to vomit. This certainly alters the function normally of your body. And certainly it becomes a substance that is psychotropic and that must be regulated. So because something has been used traditionally or by culture, let's take, for example, female genital mutilation, or what they call circumcision. It was being used culturally. So should we leave it go because it's cultural? And this is why I say is disingenuous and it is dishonest, is because the same groups of rights lawyers who are condemning and taking to court certain cultural rights are trying to uphold others which are equally harmful or even harmful more to people. But because they are economic interests, and this is what we need to emphasize, because these plants have high economic return to those ones who traffic them, to those ones who grow them, they tend to shroud this profit motive against the welfare and well-being of human beings. They tend to shroud this in very legalistic arguments about rights. And that, for me, should be exposed and should be rejected, and we should push against it. So let's not hide behind scientific proof, lack of proof, when we know that these particularly, why are people not going eating cassava leaves or beans leaves if they love to eat plants? It is because this alters the state of being naturally of a human being, and that's why they are being used the way they are used.
Thank you so much there. And finally, let's talk about the penalties involved in this particular legislation that is still under formulation. Yesterday it was in Parliament for second reading, and hopefully it will be coming for the third reading and possibly to be passed. But in the provisions that were tabled, the penalties look so huge, and I can look at 1 billion shillings for traffickers, and actually not only traffickers, finding you in possession of narcotics drugs can fetch 1 billion, a penalty of 1 billion shillings, or 3 times the market value of the drugs, and also imprisonment not exceeding 20 years, or both. So talk about the penalties. Can these, harsh penalties really fight this vice?
First of all, we must point out that the drugs problem is global. Even in jurisdictions in the developed world, where you have the best investigative systems, where you have the judicial systems working very well, they still have a big problem of drug use, drug abuse, and all the ills that come with it. So yes, it will be a challenge, but one, the issue of penalties that have been put in there. We know that the problem of drugs persists because it's one of the most lucrative, illegal, and dangerous products that people have. So if you are, the spirit of the law is that if you are gaining illicit, huge amounts of from your peddling of drugs, from your trafficking, from your exportation, then you must get equal deterrent punishments or fines. One of the problems why Uganda is a big transit and trafficking country, and also now increasingly a consumptive country, is because we have what we call a slap on the wrist of the offenders. We have joking, jochura, and very meaningless fines and punishments. So people don't mind. They will come and traffic. If you get them, they pay the little money and get away with it. So that's why you need to have this deterrent, because the trade is worth trillions of shillings. And so finding people $1 billion for trillions, that's nothing. But the other thing I think is there is also misreporting and misrepresentation. The fines are around 10 million, 5 million, 2, 3, 4 years, and this also takes the discretion of the judicial officer. So the fines that are proposed, in my view, are proportionate to the offense. For example, there is a provision that if you have property that has been acquired because of illicit trade in drugs, it should be forfeited. But this is not different from the other laws, the laws on corruption. And so why are people particularly thinking that this is more punitive than the others? Actually, most of the provisions are similar to equivalent laws that have been passed by Parliament and assented to by the President in other instances. So there is nothing outlandish or out of the ordinary, in my view, in the provisions and in the proposed deterrent punishments, but also the sentencing that is in the law.
Thank you so much, Richard Baguma, a policy advocate, a communication expert, and an advocate for proper nutrition. Thank you so much for your time. The irony is that the economic benefits behind narcotics and psychotropic substances may actually affect enforcement and, of course, the benefit that we expect from this particular legislation. My name is Sima Polo. This is The Limelight. We'll be back next Friday. We go into Emisinji after here. Good evening and a splendid weekend.